Sumter, welcome to RenegadeSuccessCoach.com, and in this short video, which is part one of a two-series, I'm going to share with you 6 things that you can do to make your coaching program more exciting. And whether this is a live coaching experience, or and you're on stage, or you're doing it virtually via a webinar or some sort of teleseminar, these are 6 things that you can do that will make your coaching business, your coaching practice a little more exciting. And I laugh because I've done some pretty crazy things in launching my coaching program. And so the first is, you should always have icebreakers. You should have something funny, something fun that they can look at in the very beginning, or they can participate in. And when I'm coaching virtually, if it's over the phone, I like to tell maybe a funny joke. If it is something that happened to me that day that was funny, then I'll share it with them. And it doesn't have to necessarily be funny, okay? But it needs to be something that's going to get their attention. Even if you had something tragic happen to you, that day. For example, there was one coaching session where I actually lost my dog. He was hit by a car, and I shared that with the group. And it's sort of a tragic icebreaker, but you know what? It works. It gets people attention. It gets them engaged. It gets them to start to pay attention. And so that's one way, okay, that you can make your coaching program a little more exciting. The second way you can make your coaching program a little more exciting is to have an agenda, okay? And so at the very beginning, you need to tell people what they can expect. And to make it exciting for them, make sure that it's benefit driven for them. Don't just say, okay, I'm going to talk about this, and I'm going to talk about that, and you sound you're boring. And when you're boring, then they become bored as hell, and before you know it, they start checking out. And what do I mean by checking out? It could be a variety of things. They can start surfing the internet. They can start doing other things while they're listening to you. They can just check out altogether. Okay, disconnect from your webinar, disconnect from your call, or in some cases, get up and walk out of your event and go find something else to do. And that's the last thing you want to happen. Okay, so make sure that when you're talking about what it is you're going to be covering, that you make it exciting, make it benefit driven for them, so that they know, wow, I don't want to miss that session, or I don't want to miss that part, because I'll be really looking forward to that. And then make sure that your presentation is not boring. Make sure that you have tons of stories. And I'll give you a prime example of telling stories. Stories is a great way to teach people. It's a great way to get them to remember things, okay? I remember a long time ago, someone invited me to come speak at an event. And they called me up and they said, Mark, we have a problem. And I said, what's the issue? And they said, well, we have you scheduled, to speak in 1 hour, and you have 2 hours. And I said, yeah, I'm aware of that. She said, the problem is that the speaker who goes on after you canceled. He's not going to be here. And so, is there any way that you can fill those 2 hours? And I said, sure, I can do that. Well, all I did was I just took my presentation, which, was a 2-hour presentation, and I stretched it to 4. How do I stretch it to 4? I added more stories, okay? I added more stories. And by doing so, okay, not only do you get to drive home the content better, but you're able to build better rapport, with your listeners, with the audience, and in more, you get to sell more of your stuff. In other words, that particular day, when I had a 4-hour session versus 2, I had some of my best sales ever, okay? And so, make sure your presentation is fun. Also, keep your presentation lively, okay? That's number 4. Keep your presentation lively. And I'll give you an example of that. It's an embarrassing example, but it's one that I shared with a group of 1,200 people at an event that I did in Baltimore, Maryland. So I was leaving Kansas City to go speak in Baltimore, Maryland the following morning at 8 a.m. Okay, at an event. And I was to do a 4-hour block. Now, when I left Kansas City, it was summertime. The temperatures had reached about 110 degrees. If you've ever been here, the humidity just makes it that much worse. And I was flying out on the very last flight of the day, going to Baltimore. And so it was still extremely hot, and since I wasn't speaking that day, I left wearing a t-shirt, and I had on some cargo shorts and a pair of flip-flops. I had checked a bag which had contained my suit, and some, obviously, my other stuff that I was going to be traveling with. And I had a backpack with me. My backpack had my laptop, my presentation materials with me. I never checked those items. But when I arrived in Baltimore, no suitcase. And I was promised that my suitcase sometime throughout the night would arrive in Baltimore, and I would have it so that I could be dressed and ready to go at 8 o'clock the next morning. Well, 7 o'clock rolled around, and I still had no suitcase. So I called the promoter and said, I'm here, but my luggage is not. And he said, what does that mean? And I explained to him that I did not have a suit. I had checked those items. The airline lost my luggage. Up until this point, they had not delivered it. And the only thing that I have with me is the clothes I flew in on yesterday. And he said, what is that? And I described it to him, and he started laughing. Now, I can tell you that most promoters would be mortified by the fact that someone would go on stage wearing shorts, flip-flops, and a t-shirt. And he said to me, Mark, a lot of people are excited to hear you speak, and I don't think that they would care what you're wearing. So what did I do? Well, I got on stage in my flip-flops, my cargo shorts, and my t-shirt, and I explained to them why I was dressed the way that I was dressed. Now, why is that funny? Well, the humor came in me explaining to them that since I didn't have a second pair of underwear, I had to go to the gift shop, and the only thing they had available for me to buy were tighty-whities, which happened to be one size too small, but it was better than nothing. And so I stood on stage, I raised my t-shirt and showed them that I was wearing a fresh pair of tighty-whities on stage. They found that to be hilarious. Okay. Now I went on to deliver my speech, and again had some of the best sales ever because I kept it lively for them. I started with an icebreaker, that is telling the story of my lost luggage, confessing to them that I was wearing tighty-whities, and for the record, I don't wear those on a regular basis. It kept the presentation fun. I explained to them exactly what it was I was going to be covering. I did it in a benefit-driven way, which made it exciting for them. And basically, I did have some people say to me, once you told us what you were going to talk about, I didn't want to leave the room. Okay? And so that's why sharing with them your agenda, what you're going to be talking about, is really, really important. Keeping it lively. You also want participation. Now, how do you do that? Well, you can do that a number of ways. If you're delivering your coaching program virtually, and you're doing it, let's say, through a webinar, okay, then there are tools within the webinar platform that you might be using that allows for some participation, where you can do polls, and you can ask them to participate in polls. You can ask them to submit questions to you. You can ask them to participate in a chat, okay? If you're doing it via the phone line, same thing, okay? There are teleseminar platforms out there that will allow you to tell a person if they have a question, raise their hand, okay? Or you can actually invite someone if you are in lecture mode. In other words, where you're doing all the talking and they're doing the listening. You can't hear them, but they can hear you, okay? You can invite someone from the audience to step forward and actually hear the conversation occur between you and them, and then you can mute them and then invite someone else to join into the conversation. So you can have them participate that way. When I was on stage in Baltimore in my flip-flops and my cargo shorts and my t-shirt, I invited people up on stage. I also went out and interacted with people in the audience as well. Okay, and so there are ways that you can do those things. And then lastly, invite questions. Have a Q&A session, but be very careful with Q&A sessions, because a Q&A session can always come back and bite you in the ass. And why is that? Well, if you didn't do the 5 things I mentioned, over the course of this video correctly, then you can invite some questions that might be unwanted. Okay, and so make sure that you do those things. Make sure you're prepared for the Q&A. And quite frankly, if you know your subject matter, you'll be able to answer any question that is thrown at you, from any member of your audience or any member who's participating in the coaching session. So those are the 6 steps that you can use to build and to have a more exciting coaching program or presentation. Now, in video number 2, I dive deeper into exactly how you can do that. So here's what you do. Go to the link that you see below this video. Click on that link. It's going to take you to another page, okay, where you will have the opportunity to view how to design a coaching program, how to present that program, and then more importantly, how to have that program be extremely lucrative for you, to the tune of making 5-6 figures in this particular business. So thanks for watching this video. Look forward to seeing you on the inside of RenegadeSuccessCoach.com.